The gavel comes down before my attorney even finishes her sentence. Motion denied. Additional discovery period granted to the petitioner. I press my fingernails into my palm under the table, hard enough to leave marks, because that's the only thing keeping me from standing up and screaming in the middle of courtroom 7. My stepfather sits across the aisle looking exactly the way he always looks, unhurried, expensive, certain that the world will arrange itself to his satisfaction. His attorney, a man named Hargrove who charges more per hour than I make in a day, leans over and says something that makes my stepfather smile. My mother has been dead for 4 months. She spent the last 6 weeks of her life in a coma, in a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and artificial flowers. And now the man who spent 3 of those 6 weeks trying to have her feeding tube removed is attempting to claim the only thing she left me. Our attorney, a woman named Dana who I've known since college, squeezes my forearm under the table. She leans close enough that only I can hear her. This is the 3rd delay. Delays benefit him, not us. He's burning through your patience on purpose. I know. I've watched him do it my entire life. His name is Gerald. My mother married him when I was 11 years old, after 2 quiet years of just the 2 of us learning how to be a family of 2 instead of 3. I had been cautiously optimistic about him at first. He brought flowers on the first date, remembered small things my mother mentioned, laughed easily and loud. Within a year of the wedding, I understood that those qualities were performances, carefully maintained for an audience. Behind closed doors, he was something else entirely. Not violent, he was too controlled for that, but relentless. He monitored my mother's spending, isolated her from friends she'd had for decades, made her feel as though her opinions on her own life were quaint, but ultimately irrelevant. She stayed. I used to resent her for it. I don't anymore. After the hearing, Dana walks with me to the parking garage attached to the courthouse in downtown Portland. October rain slants sideways through the concrete levels, and we have to raise our voices over the sound of it. He's specifically targeting the property on Cascade, she says, checking her notes. Not the savings account, not the personal belongings, just the house. I know. That's what I can't figure out. The house isn't worth that much. It's a 3-bedroom craftsman in a neighborhood that gentrified slowly and never quite finished. My mother bought it herself before she met him, paid it off herself while he contributed nothing to the mortgage, left it to me specifically and clearly in the will she drafted 14 years ago, with a family attorney named Raymond Cho. Then why did he produce a second will dated 8 months ago? Dana says. And why does that will give him the right to purchase the property at assessed value, effectively pushing me out of my own inheritance? Because he forged it, I tell her. I've told her this before. The will was signed while my mother was in the hospital, non-responsive after a massive stroke. She couldn't have signed anything. She couldn't have held a pen. We know that. Dana pulls her coat tighter, proving it is harder. He had 2 witnesses. He had a notary. His attorney is arguing. She had a brief period of responsiveness that wasn't documented in the medical records. I stop walking. The rain intensifies, drumming against the roof of the parking level. That's a lie. I was there every single day. I know it's a lie, Dana says quietly, but right now, we need more than your testimony to prove it. His witnesses say otherwise. The notary stands by the document, unless we can show something that directly undermines the validity of that will. My phone buzzes. Unknown number, local area code. I almost let it ring through. Is this Natalie? A woman's voice, older, careful. Natalie Brennan? Yes. Who is this? A pause. My name is Judith Mercer. I used to work with your mother, a long time ago, before Gerald. I've been following the court filings. They're public record, as I'm sure you know. I think there's something you should see. I look at Dana. She raises her eyebrows. What kind of something? I ask. Not over the phone, Judith says. Can you meet me tomorrow morning? There's a bakery on Burnside called Hazel and Pine, 8 o'clock. Come by yourself if you can. She hangs up before I can ask anything else. Dana studies my face. What was that? I don't know yet, I tell her. Maybe nothing. Maybe the one thing we've been missing. Judith Mercer is already seated when I arrive. A small woman in her late 60s with cropped silver hair and the kind of precise, economical movements that suggest a life spent being efficient with time. She has a coffee in front of her and nothing else on the table. No phone, no bag, nothing that would suggest she planned to stay long. She stands when she sees me and doesn't smile. Exactly, but her expression softens in a way that feels like recognition. You look like her, she says. especially around the eyes. I sit down across from her. I keep my voice even. You knew my mother. We worked together at Aldercroft Financial, she says. Back in the 90s, before your parents divorced. Before everything. She was there for almost 7 years. Smartest person in the room, most of the time. She never let anyone know it. I want to ask her why she never appeared in my life before this. Why I'm meeting her in a bakery instead of at my mother's funeral. But I hold those questions back. I learned patience from watching my mother's patience, even when it cost her. What did you want to show me? I ask. Judith wraps both hands around her coffee cup. She leans forward slightly. Your mother, did she ever talk to you about a business she ran on the side? Something separate from Gerald? Separate from the marriage? I shake my head slowly. My mother worked part-time at a nonprofit during most of my childhood. After that, she taught adult literacy classes twice a week. There was never any business that I knew of. Judith nods like this was the answer she expected. She kept it quiet on purpose, she says. She started it in 2009, very small, an investment partnership with 2 other women from Aldercroft. Property management. They bought a commercial space in the Hawthorne district, renovated it, leased it out, made steady money for 12 years. Your mother's share was held in a separate LLC that Gerald had no visibility into. I sit very still. She never mentioned this. She wouldn't have, Judith says. I think she kept it as insurance isn't quite the right word. More like a door she could open someday, if she needed to leave. She never left. But she kept the door there. My throat tightens. What happened to the partnership? The other 2 women sold their shares 3 years ago. Your mother bought them out. She was the sole owner at the time of her death. Judith slides a folded piece of paper across the table. The LLC is called Mercer Brennan Holdings. She put my name on it as a courtesy, years ago. I don't have any financial stake, but I have signatory authority, and I have access to the records. I unfold the paper. It's a summary printout from a business account. I have to read the balance twice before it settles in my mind. $260,000. And the commercial property, Judith says, which currently generates $4,200 a month in rental income, is tied to the LLC, not to your mother personally, not to her estate, which means it's not in the estate Gerald is contesting. I set the paper down carefully. He doesn't know about this. He doesn't know it exists, Judith says. But here's what he does know. She reaches into her coat pocket and places a small flash drive on the table between us. Your mother gave this to me 2 years ago. She said if anything ever happened to her, I should wait and watch. And if I thought you needed it, I should find you. I stare at the flash drive. What's on it? Your mother kept records, Judith says. She was very thorough. She documented certain things Gerald did over the years. Financial things, mostly. But also some communications between Gerald and a man named Dennis Corrigan. The name means nothing to me at first. Then it clicks into place. Dennis Corrigan is Gerald's oldest friend. They've known each other since college. Dennis Corrigan is also, I suddenly remember, a notary public who operates out of an office in Lake Oswego. The notary, I say. The same one who supposedly witnessed your mother sign a new will, Judith says. While she was in a coma, yes. The bakery noise around me recedes to a distant hum. I look down at the flash drive. I look back at Judith. Why didn't you go to the police? I ask. Because your mother didn't want that, Judith says simply. She wanted you to be the one to decide what to do with it. She trusted you to handle it the right way. I pick up the flash drive and close my hand around it. It's lighter than it should be, given what it apparently contains. That evening, I sit at my kitchen table with my laptop open, and Dana on the phone. We go through the files together. It takes 3 hours. What Gerald and Dennis Corrigan had built over years was not complicated, exactly, but it was meticulous in its own way. Gerald had used Dennis to notarize at least 4 documents he had no legitimate authority to execute. 2 were related to a business deal that collapsed 6 years ago. 1 was an insurance claim that I now understand why my mother acted so strangely about at the time. And the 4th was the will drafted 8 months ago, signed allegedly by my mother, witnessed by 2 people I've never heard of and notarized by Dennis Corrigan, who happened to have been at Gerald's birthday dinner the previous month. There's more. My mother had printed out and saved a series of text messages between Gerald and Dennis from 2021, 2 years before her stroke. In one exchange, Gerald writes something that Dana makes me read twice, to make sure I'm understanding it correctly. He wrote, If she goes before I do, I need that house. The business stuff doesn't matter, just the house. Dennis wrote back. I can make that work whenever you need me. 2 years before she had the stroke. 2 years before she became incapacitated. Dana is quiet for a long time after I read that to her. Then she says, Natalie, this is enough. This is more than enough. I don't sleep well that night. I lie in bed in the dark thinking about my mother. I think about all the times I watched her navigate Gerald's moods, adjust herself to fit the space he allowed her to occupy, compress her own wants into something small enough that he wouldn't notice them, and feel threatened. I used to think she was afraid of him. I understand now that she was protecting something. She was protecting the door. She was protecting me. She knew. I whispered to the ceiling. She knew exactly what he was, and she made sure I would have what I needed when the time came. The next morning, I meet Dana at her office before either of us goes anywhere else. We lay everything out on her conference table. The flash drive contents, printed and organized. The LLC documentation from Judith. The original will from 14 years ago. The fraudulent will with its suspicious notarization. The text messages. Gerald is moving for an accelerated ruling, Dana tells me, which means he thinks he's winning. He'll want this resolved before any external scrutiny lands on his attorney or on Corrigan. What do I do? I ask. Dana leans back in her chair. We could go straight to the district attorney with the forgery evidence. That's the nuclear option. Or, we could use what we have strategically, apply pressure at the right point, and let him make the decision to retreat. I think about my mother again. She kept the door there, Judith said. She didn't kick it down. She kept it there and waited for the right moment. Let's give him a chance to do the right thing first, I say. Dana raises an eyebrow. You're more generous than I would be. No, I tell her. I'm tactical. Gerald keeps an office at a property management firm he co-owns in the Pearl District. The receptionist tries to stop me in the lobby, but I've been walking through rooms that Gerald controls since I was 11 years old, and I know exactly how to move through them. I push through the interior door without breaking stride, and knock twice on his private office before opening it. He looks up from his desk. For one instant, before his face rearranges itself, I see it. He's startled. Not just surprised, startled. He didn't expect me to be here, and he doesn't know what I have. Natalie, he says, recovering smoothly. This isn't appropriate. Any communication should go through. I put one page on his desk. Just one. It's the printed text exchange between him and Dennis Corrigan. He looks at it. He doesn't touch it. He looks at it for a long time. I let the silence sit there between us. I learned this from him, actually. He used to use silence as a weapon against my mother, filling rooms with a quiet that was somehow louder than yelling. I never thought I'd use the technique myself. Where did you get this? He asks finally. Mom was careful, I tell him. She documented things. You know how thorough she was. His jaw tightens. He looks up at me. You have no idea what you're— This is out of context. There are explanations. Dennis Corrigan notarized a will signed by a woman who was in a medically documented coma. I say, that's not a context problem. That's a felony. He stands, and for a moment he uses his height the way he always has, as a form of argument. I don't step back. Drop the petition by Friday, I tell him. Issue a public statement acknowledging that Mom's original will is the valid document, or I take this to the district attorney and the Oregon State Bar, and we do this the longer way. You're making a serious mistake, he says. His voice is lower now, quieter in a way that used to frighten me. I pick the page back up off his desk. You made the mistake, I tell him. You made it 2 years ago when you texted your friend about my mother's house before she was even sick. You just didn't expect her to be smarter than you. I walk out without looking back. In the elevator down to the lobby, my hands shake badly enough that I have to press them flat against my thighs. But my breathing stays even. I focus on that. My breathing stays even. The problem with applying that kind of pressure is that it can push someone into action instead of retreat. I know this. Dana warned me. 2 days after my visit to Gerald's office, someone breaks into Dana's car in the parking lot of her building. Her briefcase is taken. It doesn't contain anything related to my case. She keeps case materials in a locked interior office, but the message is clear. The same day, my supervisor at the elementary school, where I work as a reading specialist, calls me in for a conversation about my absences. I've taken 4 personal days in 6 weeks to deal with court dates and attorney meetings. She is sympathetic but firm. My students need consistency, she reminds me. I understand. I've been telling myself the same thing. That evening, a woman I don't know leaves a voicemail saying I should think carefully about the stress I'm putting on myself and everyone around me. Just some friendly advice, she says, for my own good. I sit in my car in my own driveway and let myself feel it for exactly 3 minutes. The exhaustion, the weight of it, the particular loneliness of fighting a battle that most people in my life don't fully understand. Then I go inside and call Judith. He's escalating, I tell her. Of course he is, she says. People like Gerald only know one speed when they're cornered. Harder. I need to know if there's anything else on that drive that I missed. There's one more thing, she says carefully. I almost didn't include it, but your mother specifically flagged it. It's an email chain. My mother had forwarded it to herself from an account I don't recognize, one she must have created and never told me about. The chain is between Gerald and the 2 witnesses on the fraudulent will, a couple named Frank and Patricia Bauer, who are apparently distant friends of Dennis Corrigan. In the emails, Gerald discusses the plan directly. He uses careful language, nothing overtly incriminating on its own. But read in sequence, combined with the notarization records and the text messages, it forms a coherent picture of premeditation. He planned this years before she got sick. I tell Dana the next morning. She nods slowly. Anticipatory fraud. He wasn't reacting to her illness. He was waiting for it. There is a probate hearing scheduled for the following Tuesday before Judge Calloway, the same judge who has granted every delay Gerald's attorney has requested. The same judge whose clerk, I learned last week from a paralegal at a different firm, has twice been seen having lunch with Hargrove, Gerald's attorney. I ask Dana about it directly. She hesitates. It's potentially meaningless, she says. Attorneys and court clerks interact professionally all the time. But I've heard from 2 other practitioners that Calloway tends to move slowly on contested probate cases, where one party is represented by Hargrove's firm specifically. The pattern isn't provable yet. It's more of a professional observation. We file a motion to recuse Judge Calloway the day before the hearing. The morning of the hearing, the courthouse feels different than it has before. Or maybe I feel different in it. Dana walks beside me up the front steps, and I'm not gripping my files to my chest the way I have been for months. I'm carrying them the way you carry something that belongs to you. Gerald arrives with Hargrove. He's dressed the same as always, pressed, polished, projecting ease. But when he sees me on the courthouse steps, he doesn't smile. He doesn't do the thing he's always done, the measured, condescending acknowledgement. He looks at me and then looks away. And in that look I see something I have never seen in him before. He's not certain anymore. The reassignment motion is heard first, before a visiting judge named Patricia UN, who is covering 3 courtrooms that week. She reviews our filing with the focused attention of someone who takes the paperwork seriously, which is all I have ever wanted from any of this. Hargrove argues that our motion is frivolous and designed to delay proceedings. He uses the word frivolous 4 times in 7 minutes. Judge UN listens to all of it without expression. Then Dana presents the pattern we've documented, Calloway's rulings across the past 2 years in contested probate matters involving Hargrove's firm, the timeline of delays in my case specifically, the clerk observation, carefully framed as procedural concern rather than accusation. Judge UN sets down her pen. She looks at Gerald's table, then at ours. She says, I'm granting the recusal motion. This case will be reassigned. In the meantime, I'm going to take a look at the core submissions myself before that reassignment is finalized. Hargrove rises immediately. Your Honor, the petitioner's position is supported by a properly notarized. I stand up. I don't mean to. Exactly. It happens the way some things happen, from somewhere below decision. One moment I'm seated and the next I'm on my feet, and every head in the courtroom has turned toward me. Judge UN looks at me. Miss Brennan? My voice comes out steadier than I have any right to expect. Your Honor, the notarization on that will was performed by Dennis Corrigan, a personal associate of the petitioner with a documented history of executing notarizations on the petitioner's behalf outside standard independent witness protocols. I have evidence that Mr. Corrigan and the petitioner discussed this specific outcome in text correspondence, and I quote, 2 years before my mother's stroke occurred. The room is very quiet. I look at Gerald. He has gone still in the way that water goes still right before it freezes. His hands are flat on the table in front of him. His attorney is writing something furiously on a legal pad, but I can see from where I stand that it's the kind of writing that doesn't have anywhere to go. 2 years, I say. He planned this 2 years before she was incapacitated. That is not a disputed inheritance. That is a forged document executed as part of a premeditated plan to defraud my mother's estate. Dana touches my arm. I sit back down. My heart is going at a pace I'll pay attention to later, not now. Judge Yuen holds Gerald's gaze for a moment that seems to stretch. Then she looks at the documents Dana has already prepared and submitted. She takes her time reading. No one in the room seems to breathe. I'm going to call a brief recess, she says finally. Counsel for the petitioner, I'd like to speak with you in chambers. The 30 minutes that follow are the longest of my life. Dana comes out of chambers first. She finds me in the hallway, sitting on a wooden bench outside the courtroom doors, and she is smiling in a way I have not seen from her in 4 months. He's going to withdraw the petition, she says. I close my eyes. Hargrove is in there right now negotiating the terms of the withdrawal. Yuen made it very clear that if this goes to a full evidentiary hearing, the forgery evidence and the Corrigan connection will be part of the record, which means the district attorney's office will take notice. Gerald has apparently decided that protecting his remaining reputation is worth more than the house. My hands are in my lap. I look at them. They're not shaking anymore. And Calloway? I ask. Dana sits down beside me. I've already drafted a formal complaint to the Oregon Judicial Conduct Commission. It's circumstantial at this stage, but the pattern is documented. They'll investigate. She pauses. It might not result in anything. These things often don't. I know, I tell her. But it's on the record now. That matters. The formal withdrawal is filed before the end of the business day. Judge Yuen, in reviewing the case history before reassignment, issues a brief written order affirming the validity of my mother's original will and noting that the court finds no merit in the claims advanced against it. She uses the phrase clear evidentiary concerns regarding the competing document. She is careful, as judges are, but it's enough. Dennis Corrigan voluntarily surrenders his notary commission 2 weeks later, before the state investigation completes. Gerald's attorney Hargrove issues a statement citing unspecified ethical concerns that prevent him from continuing to represent the petitioner in this matter. Gerald does not issue any statement at all. I drive to my mother's house on a Saturday in November. It takes me a while to think of it that way. Again her house, now my house because for 4 months it has felt like contested territory, something temporary and uncertain. Now I unlock the front door and walk through the rooms and let them be just rooms again. The craftsman creaks in a familiar way under my feet. Her books are still on the shelves. Her reading chair is still angled toward the window where the afternoon light comes in at 3 o'clock. I sit in it for a while and watch the light move. She kept a cedar box on the shelf in the bedroom closet. I always knew it was there, and I always knew it was private, one of the few things in the house that was clearly and completely hers in a way that Gerald had never been able to erode. After she died, I brought it to my apartment for safekeeping before Gerald could inventory the house. I go back to get it now. I sit on the bedroom floor and open it. There are photographs, some going back to before I was born. My mother at 20-something, bright and unself-conscious in a way that makes something in my chest ache. Her parents, a formal portrait from her years at Aldercroft Financial, where she stands with a group of colleagues including, I now realize, a younger Judith Mercer. Letters. A small notebook. I open the notebook carefully. The entries span years. Some are mundane. Some are documentation dates, names, descriptions of things I now recognize as Gerald's long pattern of control and manipulation, and some are just her thoughts, her observations, her dry and particular sense of humor that she learned to suppress in his presence, but apparently never stopped exercising in private. Near the end of the notebook, in the careful handwriting I know better than my own, she wrote something that I have to read 3 times before I let myself believe it's there. I don't know what Natalie will face after I'm gone. I know Gerald well enough to know he won't simply step back and let things be, but I've made sure she has what she needs. Not because she can't fight her own battles, she can. She always could. She gets that from me. But because she deserves to fight from a position of strength, not starting from nothing the way I did. I close the notebook. I sit with it in my lap for a long time. She was protecting the door, Judith had said. She had kept it there. She had kept it there for me. The LLC transfers to my name without complication. Judith helps me navigate the paperwork over 2 weekends at her kitchen table, drinking tea and talking about my mother in ways that make her feel, for the first time since the hospital, like someone who existed fully, rather than someone I'm only now discovering in pieces. The commercial property on Hawthorne continues to generate income. I don't touch the principal for 6 months. Then I use a portion of it to establish something I've been thinking about since before the case ended. I call it the Clear Record Project. Its purpose is simple in theory, complex in practice, providing legal support to people who are facing contested wills or estate fraud and who lack the resources to fight effectively. A collaborating attorney handles intake. I handle outreach and funding. In the first 4 months, we take on 6 cases. We win 4 of them outright, and 2 are still in process. Dana comes with me to speak at a continuing education seminar for Oregon family law practitioners. My section of the presentation is titled Documentation as Protection, and it covers what my mother understood and practiced for years without ever explaining it to me directly. Keep records, date them, store copies somewhere your adversary cannot access. Understand that evidence gathered quietly over time is worth more in a courtroom than any amount of last-minute reaction. I use her story as the case study, with her name and her own words. I think she would have preferred that to anonymity. I think she would have wanted to be the example, just this once, instead of the cautionary note. Gerald and I do not communicate. We pass each other occasionally, as you do in a city that is smaller than it appears, and he looks at me the way people look at something they once underestimated. The investigation into Dennis Corrigan is ongoing. I follow the filings when I can. I go back to the cemetery on a Tuesday when nobody else is there. The leaves have been down for weeks, and the grass is the particular brown-green of a Pacific Northwest November, muted and cold and honest. I stand at the headstone and I don't try to make it into a speech, the way I have before. I just stand there. She used to tell me that patience wasn't passivity, that knowing when to speak was its own kind of strength, that the right moment was worth waiting for. I think about the courtroom, the way the room went quiet when I stood up, the way Gerald's face changed when he understood that what I had was real, that she had been building it carefully for years, that she had handed it to me in the form of a cedar box and a flash drive, and a woman named Judith who had been waiting for the right moment too. 2 years, I had said. He planned this 2 years before she was incapacitated. Those were the words. Not dramatic, not theatrical, just the truth, stated plainly, at the moment when the truth was most necessary. That's all it ever takes, really. The right truth, in the right room, at the right time. I place my hand on the cold headstone for a moment, then I turn and walk back to my car, carrying forward everything she left me, which turns out to be more than I knew, and more than enough.